Hello, my name is Matthew, and it turns out that it is season 2 of Has Steve Read It? This was an idea that I had about a year and a half ago. I was a fan of watching Steve Donoghue's YouTube channel, all of his great videos talking about mountains of books, and had that funny idea of I've been a reader. I've read a lot of books. I have my own little library, and kind of looking around and thinking, what are the odds that Steve Donoghue has read every single book that I own on my shelves? And I tried my best to make a fun little tag. Um, at the time, I had an extremely small channel, maybe a few hundred, something like that. I didn't know. Um, I didn't have an association with Steve. We didn't have a correspondence, and largely my channel was still talking into the void, talking into the darkness. There wasn't very many people watching my channel, but I had a fun idea of um, trying to make a tag. Has Steve read these books? And um, I thought I gave my best shot. I collected um, uh, books on my shelves, made a little video, and it caught on. Brian from Bookish did the tag. Steve um, noticed it and made a response video, and it snowballed. And all of a sudden, for 2 months, or over a month, there were countless other fellow booktube colleagues making their videos, and ultimately it turned out to be some of the most absolute fun I've had on booktube and YouTube, and largely as a viewer, watching everybody's videos and Steve's responses. Ultimately, it gave me a sense of really being in good company. Everybody, from the videos that I saw anyway, everybody was a good sport. There wasn't any tricky business. In my video, I didn't make any rules. I didn't think about it. Of course, there should be some ground rules. Steve mentioned throughout his videos they need to be books that he's had a chance of reading. It's not a game of let me Google the most obscure books that nobody has ever read. There's no fun in that. There's no sport. And for as fun as it was, I ultimately had a few regrets. There were a few things that really bothered me. I made a video calling Steve Donoghue out by name, saying, here's a video all about you. Have you read these books or not? And like I said, I hadn't had a correspondence with Steve. And so it could potentially leave a bad taste in your mouth. It's not a very good introduction as far as introducing yourself and saying hello and not having bad intentions. If I could go back in time, I would have at the very least had a private email correspondence beforehand. A lot of the fun was Steve started making response videos, but not to my original video. He was making a response video for each successive tag entry. Each person that was making these has Steve Reddit videos, and so each day there was a new one of these videos and a new response video from Steve, and Steve kept saying, eventually I'll get to Matthew's. And so each day I'm watching all of these videos, and each day having this anticipation, is today going to be the day? And finally, my video turned out to be the season finale. And at that point, I was already shaking in my boots. There were so many books mentioned that would be long shots, almost all the books I had never heard of. And then I was thinking about my modest list, which were just the books on my shelves. It was my best shot looking around and knowing there were clear books that I was showing, like, hey Steve, have you ever read this? And I'm holding up a book by Thomas Mann, or a book by the Modern Classic Library. Or eventually I realized that I was severely being outclassed. And of course Steve made his video responding to mine. Finally, held no punches, great fun. It's all a friendly back and forth. And what he got to, like, have you read this book by Thomas Mann? Yeah, he's putting his head on his forehead. So today there was great excitement. Daniel from GuiltyFeat revived this idea for a video, and I saw Mark Nash. I watched Mark Nash's video, and Steve had another response video, which is just some of the best viewing. It's so interesting to see books that are very it's unlikely that some of these books would be held up outside of this context. I think that's most of the fun as far as watching anyway. So some of the rules, we have eight books. They're books that are just have been on my shelves. I recently did a tiny house library tour. All of my cards are on the table. Nothing purposefully crazy. I don't really have those kinds of books. I've read everything I'm going to show. Nothing from a different language, an original different language. I don't read. I don't speak any other language. There's some foreign language stuff, but it's all translated. Things that I've bought at bookstores. Everything that's readily available. And so after this long preamble, I'll show some books. And watching this, having watched many more of Steve Donoghue's videos, I think maybe I have an idea of a better idea of things that he might not have read that I have. And so the first book I'll show is not on the list. It's just in context. And it's all about Hatter by G.V. Desani, who's I believe an Indian writer that came to Britain and started writing in English and had this really unique voice. It was like an amalgamation of Indian sensibilities through the English language, and had sort of a cult hit. It's a philosophical, funny, strange novel, and I loved it. It's a NYRB classic. What made me think is I know Steve isn't a big fan of their lineup, so that's not the book. I was such a fan of G.V. Desani. Like, he was a strange kind of alien writer. I read him in my mid-20s maybe, and I investigated and I found this book. So we're at number 1, and it's Hallie by G.V Desani. It's a short story collection translated by, let me see if it says, oh no, it's written in English. Overall unremarkable. I don't think G.V Desani wrote much more after his one novel. I think he was more of an academic. So not great. It's not a book I would recommend or talk about, but has Steve read it? The Dwarf by Par Lagerkvist. The Dwarf by Par Lagerkvist. And this is a Swedish author. He wrote Barabbas, which is how I found out about him. And this is translated into English by Alexandra Dick. And Barabbas is a story of the criminal that was taken down off the cross to replace for Christ to be the replacement on the crucifix, and it was a story of the rest of Barabbas's life. Everybody being all grumpy that he's the one that got saved, and the Dwarf is an extremely dark, perverse novel. It reminded me of not so much as an adaptation of Othello, but more of a repurposing of the evilness or the evil quality of an Iago character repurposed. So I wouldn't say it was enjoyable, but it was powerful, creepy. So I'll just hold it up. Border Districts by Gerald Murnane. Border Districts. And the only reason I think maybe Steve hasn't read it is that this is an Australian writer. I think that I first found out about him in either the New York Review of Books or the London Review of Books, talking about this brilliant writer from Australia that's like a hermit or a recluse, and he's a writer's writer. They would have these writing conferences that they had to have in Australia because he wouldn't leave his little town. It was some article that just kind of fascinated me, and this was going to be like his magnum opus or something. And I didn't find it amazing or brilliant or anything. I found it rather dull. It's one of those like memoirs that are retooled to be a fiction. It's an extremely popular device in fiction today, but yeah, maybe. I've never really heard anything much more about this writer other than whatever periodical I saw him in. So this is a gambit. It's a romance. I know Steve loves his romances, and at the beginning of the year I was interested in trying a romance, and I thought the best thing to do is just go to the grocery store, go to that little cart, that little rack of salacious romances that they have, and pick one up just like anyone else would do in the grocery store. All those old biddies looking for a little bit of fun. And I picked up When a Rogue Meets His Match by Elizabeth Hoyt. And I don't know if Elizabeth Hoyt I know she's a best-selling author and things like that, and Steve's read all these romances, but maybe not this one. I'm not sure. Steve might be slapping his forehead right now. I didn't care for it for some of the snappy dialogue and the plot, the intrigue and romance. I'm too slow of a reader. I would much rather just watch a romance movie or a romance miniseries than to invest the amount of time that ultimately kind of gives me the same feeling that a movie would. But when a rogue meets his match, a Croatian. So this is Belladonna by Dasa Drndic. Belladonna, that comes up. And this is translated, let me see. Translated from the Croatian by Celia Hawksworth. And I loved this novel. I thought it was just incredibly powerful, dark, and tragic. Really pulled an emotional punch. And it felt new and fresh, experimental, daring. I think, it has, not that that's too experimental, but there's inset illustrations and pictures and lists. Just in context, this list of names is moving. I have a few other of her books that I have not read yet, but I just love this, and I'm not sure. Again, Steve's beat is the American market, so maybe this didn't hit his radar. A biography of Rasputin, and it's called The Holy Devil. Rasputin, the Holy Devil. And I read this, I think I was just out of high school. I had a coworker gave me this like really strange book. It almost feels like it's like one of those occult books. And I didn't know anything about Rasputin. I hardly read it all at the time, let alone a biography. And this is by Rene Fulop-Miller. See if that catches. And I thought it was incredible. I just loved learning about this kind of strange mystical world and this strange, filthy, grimy, dirty, mystical man, and it stuck with me. All the Russian novels that I read afterwards, and thought about some of the ways that these little towns were described by Rene Fulop-Miller. Just seemed like another planet, or just something so different, where that idea of like a mystical man, or like someone that has powers, would be believed in a relatively modern setting. So Rasputin, the Holy Devil by Rene Fulop-Miller. And the last two are graphic novels, which I think is fair. Steve reads comic books, he reads graphic novels. We're having a buddy read of a graphic novel. So I have The Grapes of Ralph by Ralph Steadman. And it's not so much a graphic novel as like a illustrated, heavily illustrated essay collection. Might be a better way of putting it. And it leans heavily on the artwork. Ralph Steadman is most famously associated with his work with Hunter S. Thompson. And in my 20s, I really got a kick out of Hunter S. Thompson and the illustration artwork by Ralph Steadman. It wore off um, fairly distinctly, quickly. I found Hunter S. Thompson not entertaining the way that I did in my 20s. Ralph Steadman's artwork, which I'm a painter. I'm an artist. I use all sorts of materials, mediums, and I still appreciated his artwork for some of the creativity and the imagery, some of the experimentation. It doesn't do much for me now. I think that's because so much of his art has been copied. You see that Ralph Steadman style so often that even the original feels less original, which is unfair to Ralph Steadman, but unfortunately that's how it goes. So, wine, according to Ralph Steadman, The Grapes of Ralph. And then this is a graphic novel, and it's In Search of Lost Time, Swann's Way, a graphic novel originally by Marcel Proust, adaptation and drawings by Stephane Heuet. And let's see if that catches. And it's magnificent. This was just the pages and pages of beautiful artwork. Let's see. And it was such a fun find. I found it in a small bookstore here in Baltimore. And I think it's fair game. I mean, I went to a bookshop. They had it. It's by Liver Right. I never heard of them, but it is by Proust. So a graphic novel adaptation of In Search of Lost Time, Swann's Way by Marcel Proust, by Stephen Heuet, and translated by Arthur Goldhammer. And if this is tricky cricket, I guess let me know. But again, I'm looking at my shelves. I know Steve's read all the rest of them, so I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel. Anyway, this is great fun. I know I'm looking forward to anyone else, all the new people that are on BookTube, trying it, finding new channels, and seeing what Steve has to say about all the books that we presume he hasn't read. So let me know what you think. Steve, let me know what you think, and leave a comment if you would like, and thank you for watching.